He had given up on everything, until he met that girl with the pure heart. No one imagined that a man so tired of the world could feel true love again. Where are you watching this story from? Subscribe to the channel and leave a like, because what happened to this man will touch your heart. Rain hammered the pavement with almost deliberate violence when Owen pushed open the wooden door of the community library. Drops ran down his grey coat, forming small puddles on the worn floorboards. He shouldn't have been there that Friday in April. He'd had a last-minute meeting cancellation and a book borrowed 3 weeks ago that weighed on his conscience like all unfinished things do. "Good afternoon. You've arrived just in time. We were about to close because of the storm." The voice came from behind the tall counter, where a young woman with brown hair tied back was organizing loan cards. Owen lifted his eyes just enough not to seem rude. She wore a wine-colored jumper and had a pen between her lips as she worked. "Just returning this." He placed the book on the counter, letting it fall with more force than intended. Modern Architecture Manual was written on the worn spine. Claire picked up the book, ran her fingers over the cover like someone caressing something precious, and smiled. 3 weeks. I bet you read every page at least twice." "Once. It's too technical to reread." "Then why did it take so long to return?" The question caught Owen off guard. He stood there, dripping rainwater, searching for an answer that wouldn't sound like a confession. The truth was that reading that book at night had become a ritual that filled the empty hours before sleep. Returning it meant going back to the absolute silence of his flat. Work. Lots of work. That was the answer he found. Claire typed something into the ancient computer, whose keys made the characteristic sound of machines that had seen decades pass. "I understand. Civil engineer, correct? I saw it in your file." "Yes." "Must be interesting building things, giving form to what was once just paper." Owen shoved his hands in his pockets, an automatic gesture when discomfort came knocking. This woman spoke with a lightness he hadn't seen in anyone for a long time, as if conversation was something natural, not a minefield of words that could be used against you later. "It's a job like any other." "I disagree." Claire stood up, walking around the counter with the book still in her hands. "Every profession carries a piece of the soul of the person who chose it. You chose to build structures that remain. That says a lot." She walked to a nearby shelf, looking for something specific. Owen should leave. The rain was letting up, and he had an empty fridge waiting at home, but his feet didn't move. "I chose it because it pays well and it's predictable. Calculations don't lie." Claire turned, holding another book. Her eyes were brown like old honey, with small golden flecks that caught the yellowed light from the old fixtures. "People don't lie either when you learn to read them correctly." She held out the book. "Try this one. The Poetics of Space. It's not technical, but it talks about architecture in a way you might not have considered." "I don't read philosophy." "It's not philosophy. It's about how the spaces we inhabit shape who we are, how a house isn't just structure but memory, how every room holds pieces of life." Owen took the book by reflex. The cover was simple, navy blue with gold lettering. It weighed less than he expected. "I'll think about borrowing it." "You don't need to think, take it. If you don't like it, return it next week. No commitment." There was something in the way she said, "no commitment," that sounded almost like a challenge, as if she were saying he was exactly the type of person who ran from anything that required more than the minimum. "All right." He held the book against his chest, protecting it from the dampness of his coat. Claire returned to the counter, registered the loan, and when she handed him the slip to sign, their fingers brushed by accident. It was a brief touch, insignificant to any observer, but Owen felt something he hadn't felt for so long he almost didn't recognize it, a shiver that didn't come from the cold. "What's your name?" The words came out before he could censor them. "Claire. I've worked here for 2 years, and your Owen, 42, civil engineer, lives at 312 Acacia Road." She smiled mischievously. "Complete file." "Isn't that an invasion of privacy?" "It's my job to know the readers. It helps make good recommendations. For example, I noticed you've never taken out fiction. Only technical or history books. Why?" Owen signed the slip with his slanted handwriting, too heavy on the thin paper. "Fiction is a waste of time. I prefer real things." The best truths are disguised as fiction. Claire put the slip in a wooden drawer that creaked when opened, but I respect your choice. For now. That "for now" kept echoing as Owen crossed through the door back to the street. The rain had stopped, leaving the asphalt glistening under the streetlights that were beginning to turn on. He walked 3 blocks to his car, got in, placed the book on the passenger seat, and sat there, engine off, looking at the navy blue cover. It wasn't just a book. It was a door left ajar to something he didn't know if he wanted to cross. When he finally started the car and drove home, Owen didn't notice that for the first time in 7 years, there was something in the passenger seat besides silence. Owen didn't plan to return so soon. In fact, he spent the entire week convinced he would return the book by post or leave it in the return box outside the library. Anything to avoid another conversation with the librarian, whose eyes saw too much. But on Thursday night, when he opened The Poetics of Space just out of curiosity, he stayed up until 3 in the morning reading. Every page spoke about houses as living organisms, about corners that keep secrets, about basements representing the unconscious and attics that are refuges of dreams. He had never thought about architecture that way. For him, it had always been about structural calculations, material resistance, building codes. On Friday at 6 in the evening, he was pushing open the wooden door of the library again. Claire was up on a ladder, organizing books on the highest shelf. She wore a long mustard-colored skirt and a simple white blouse. Her bare feet showed socks with drawings of cats. When she heard the door, she turned her head. "You came back." It wasn't a question. It was a satisfied statement. "The book is good." Owen put his hands in his pockets, the defensive posture he adopted without realizing. "Just good?" Claire climbed down the ladder with the ease of someone who did this 1,000 times a day. "Interesting, different. High praise coming from you." She walked to the counter, where a thermos of tea was steaming. "Want some?" "It's chamomile with honey. My grandmother used to say it warms the soul." "I don't drink tea." "Everyone drinks something hot. Coffee, tea, cocoa. It's human instinct to seek warmth." Owen was about to refuse again when he realized how rude it would sound. Besides, the office had been without heating all day due to a problem with the boiler, and his bones still held the cold. "All right. A little." Claire picked up a white ceramic mug with a hand-painted cat and poured the tea. The liquid was pale gold, and the steam carried a gentle aroma. "My grandmother made this tea every Friday. She said Friday is a day for reflection, for looking at the week that passed and deciding what to take to the next one." Owen accepted the mug, feeling the warmth pass through the porcelain and heat his hands. "Your grandmother was Irish? How do you know?" "Chamomile with honey. It's a common combination in Ireland. My ex—" He stopped, the word wife stuck in his throat like a fishbone. "Your ex what?" Claire served herself tea, blew gently before drinking. "Nothing, forget it." "That's fine. You don't have to tell me." She smiled in a way that didn't seem condescending, just understanding. "But yes, my grandmother was from County Cork, came to England in the 60s, married my grandfather, had my mother. She raised me after my mother died, giving birth to my sister." The frankness of the statement caught Owen off guard. It wasn't the kind of information people shared casually, especially not with strangers. "I'm sorry. You don't need to be. I never knew her, so it's not a loss I feel. But my grandmother felt it, and taught me to feel it too in a strange way. She taught me to love someone I never knew through stories." Owen took a sip of the tea. It was gentle, soothing, with a touch of sweetness at the end. It went down warm through his throat and spread through his chest like a small fire. "Why are you telling me this?" Claire set her mug on the counter, tilted her head so strands of hair escaped from her bun. "Because you seem like someone who forgot that everyone has stories, that everyone carries something. And sometimes, knowing we're not alone in this carrying helps." "I didn't ask for help." "I know, but I'm offering anyway." She picked up the book he had returned the previous week and leafed through it slowly. "You know what fascinates me about libraries? It's not the books themselves. It's the people who come looking for them. Every book someone chooses is like an X-ray of the soul. It tells what's missing, what's being sought, what's being avoided. And what do my books say about me? That you build walls on the outside but desperately want to understand the empty spaces inside. That you choose technical knowledge because it's safe, but you're tired of safety. That you... Enough. Owen placed the mug back on the counter with more force than necessary. The tea sloshed but didn't spill. Claire didn't seem offended. She just watched him with those eyes that saw too much. Sorry, sometimes I talk more than I should. My grandmother used to say my tongue was faster than my judgment. It's not that. It's just that... Owen ran his hand through his hair, a rare gesture of frustration. I don't know how to deal with people who say what they think. You prefer people who lie? I prefer people who are predictable. How dull. Claire smiled, but there was kindness in the smile. Life is already too short to be predictable. They stood in silence for a few seconds. Outside, the sun was beginning to set, painting the sky orange and pink. The light came through the high windows of the library, creating golden rectangles on the wooden floor. I came to return the book, Owen finally said. Already? You read it in a week? I read it in one night. Claire's eyes lit up. And it made me think about things I hadn't thought about in a long time. Good. Thinking is the first step to feeling, and feeling is the first step to truly living. Do you always speak in metaphors? Only when I'm comfortable. Claire picked up another book from a pile next to the computer. This one arrived today. The Name of the Rose. It's fiction, but it has architecture, mystery, history. I think you'll like it. I thought you respected my choices. I do. But I also believe in expanding horizons. Try it. If you hate it, come complain in person. Owen took the book. It was thick, heavy, with a cover showing a medieval monastery. Why do you do this? What? Care. About what strangers read. What they think. Claire leaned on the counter, resting her chin in her hands. Because everyone who walks through that door is looking for something. And my job isn't just to lend books. It's to help people find what they don't even know they're looking for. And you think you know what I'm looking for? No, but I think you don't know either. And sometimes the best way to find out is to follow the clues that appear along the way. Owen held the book against his chest, feeling the familiar weight. I'll return it next Friday. I'll be here. Claire poured more tea into her own mug. I'm always here on Fridays at 6. When Owen left the library that night, the sky was already dark and the first stars were blinking timidly between the clouds drifting away. He got in the car, placed the book on the passenger seat, and before starting the engine, noticed he was smiling. Not a complete smile, but the sketch of something that once was joy. And for the first time in 7 years, Friday at 6 in the evening had a meaning that went beyond the end of the workday. The weeks that followed created a pattern that Owen wouldn't admit, but that Claire observed with silent attention. Every Friday at 6 in the evening, he appeared. Always punctual, always with the previous week's book in hand, always with that expression of someone doing something against their better judgment. Claire began leaving notes between the pages of the books she lent him, small yellow papers with her round, slanted handwriting. At first, they were just chapter recommendations. Go straight to chapter 7. The library description is magnificent. Then they became observations. This character reminds me of you, austere on the outside, confused inside. And eventually they transformed into small confessions. Today was a difficult day. I hope this book makes your day better. Owen read each note, kept them in the desk drawer of his flat and never mentioned them. But Claire noticed subtle changes, the way he started asking questions about the books instead of just returning them, how he stayed an extra 10-15 minutes talking before leaving, how his shoulders relaxed when he entered the library, as if he were removing heavy armor. In the 5th week, Owen arrived carrying a brown paper bag. I brought something. He placed the bag on the counter with excessive care. Claire was cataloguing new copies, her fingers stained with stamp ink. She looked at the bag with curiosity. Beware of Greeks bearing gifts. I don't know what that means. It means something that seems good but hides a trap. It's not a trap, it's... Owen opened the bag and took out an old book with a leather cover. I found it in a used bookshop. Thought you might like it. Claire took the book with reverence. It was an old edition of Yeats' collected poems with hand-colored illustrations. The pages had that characteristic smell of time and memory. "Owen, this must have cost a fortune. The bookshop owner owes me some favors. I did the renovation plans for his house for free. You didn't have to." "I know, but you keep leaving notes in my books. I thought it was fair to reciprocate." It was the first time he'd mentioned the notes. Claire felt her heart quicken inexplicably. "You read the notes? All of them? And?" Owen put his hands in his pockets, the defensive gesture as always. "And they're the best part of my week." The silence that followed wasn't uncomfortable. It was loaded with unspoken things, mutual recognitions, doors opening millimeter by millimeter. "Want to have dinner?" Claire asked before thinking, then widened her eyes at her own boldness. "Here?" "No, there's an Irish pub 2 blocks from here. The owner was friends with my grandmother. Makes the best shepherd's pie in the city." Owen looked at his watch. 6:20. Normally he'd already be on his way home, to his empty flat, his solitary routine, his bed that was too big for one person. "I don't usually eat out." "I know. That's why I'm inviting you." "Claire, look, no pressure. If you want to leave, go. But if a small part of you is tired of eating alone watching television, accept. It's just food, just conversation. Nothing that's going to change the world." But they both knew it was a lie. Everything happening between them had the weight of change. Every word, every look, every book exchanged was a piece of a larger puzzle that neither could see completely yet. "All right," Owen finally said, "but I'm paying. We can split it." "No. If I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it properly." Claire smiled, and there was something of triumph in that smile. Not the triumph of someone who won a dispute, but of someone who finally saw a door being opened. She closed the library 15 minutes early, something she never did. She grabbed her embroidered fabric bag, turned off the lights except the entrance one, and locked the door with the large old key she always carried on a cork keychain. They walked side by side through the neighborhood streets. It was May, and autumn was beginning to paint the trees yellow and red. The wind brought a pleasant chill that made Claire pull her coat closer to her body. "How long have you worked at the library?" Owen asked, breaking the silence that had settled between them. 2.5 years, since I graduated with my literature degree." "Why a librarian?" "With a literature degree you could be a teacher, an editor, because books saved my life when I needed to be saved," Claire said simply. "After my grandmother died, I was alone. I was 18, no other close relatives, and a house full of memories that hurt too much. It was in a library that I found refuge, where I discovered that loneliness and being alone are different things." "And are they?" "Completely. Being alone is physical. Loneliness is emotional. You can be in a crowded room and feel lonely, or you can be completely alone and feel accompanied by every character that lives in the pages." Owen processed this in silence. They turned a corner where an old wrought-iron lamp illuminated the colorful facade of a pub. "The Shamrock," said the sign in green and gold letters. "I know about loneliness," Owen said quietly. "I've lived alone for 7 years. By choice. By necessity. My marriage ended badly, very badly." Claire didn't ask more. She just nodded and pushed open the pub door. The place was small, with maybe 10 tables, walls panelled in dark wood with Irish scenes painted on them, and the unmistakable smell of roasting meat and fresh bread. A white-haired woman with her hair pulled into a tight bun came to meet them. "Claire, it's been ages, love." "Hello, Mrs. Brennan." Claire kissed the woman's cheek. "This is Owen. Owen, Mrs. Brennan was my grandmother's friend. Any friend of Claire's is welcome." Mrs. Brennan shook Owen's hand with surprising strength for someone so small. "Sit, sit. I'll bring you some cider and starters." They sat at a corner table, near a window that looked out onto an inner courtyard with climbing roses. Owen looked around, noting old photographs on the wall, porcelain saints in niches, hand-embroidered tablecloths. "It's like entering another country. Mrs. Brennan says she keeps Ireland alive here, that as long as she serves shepherd's pie and plays traditional music, a part of her homeland never dies." The cider arrived golden and slightly sparkling. Mrs. Brennan poured it herself, then brought Olive's Irish cheddar, bread still warm. Eat, eat. I'll be back to take your main order. When they were alone, Claire raised her glass. A toast? To what? To Fridays at 6, she said simply. Owen hesitated, then raised his glass, touching it lightly to hers. The sound of the crystal was delicate, almost musical. To Fridays at 6, they drank, and the cider was crisp, with a touch of acidity that cleansed the palate. Owen tried an olive, feeling the salt explode in his mouth. "Can I ask you a question?" Claire asked, breaking off a piece of bread. "Depends on the question." "Why do you keep coming back to the library? You could get books anywhere. Buy them online, download digital versions." Owen placed the olive back on the small plate, wiped his fingers on the cloth napkin. "At first it was just convenience. The library is on the way between the office and home. And now? Now?" He looked her in the eyes for the first time since they sat down. "Now it's because you're there." The honesty of the statement hung between them like smoke. Claire felt her face warm but didn't look away. "And does that scare you?" "Very much," Owen admitted. "I haven't trusted people for a long time. Haven't allowed myself to trust. I don't bite. Hey, it's not that. It's that the last person I trusted betrayed me in every way possible, and I swore I'd never allow anyone to get close enough to do that again." Claire extended her hand across the table, stopping centimeters from his. She didn't touch, just offered the possibility. "Not everyone betrays, and if you lock yourself away forever, who's really winning?" Owen looked at her hand, small with fingers stained with ink, short nails without polish. Then, in a movement that surprised him, he placed his hand over hers. The touch was electric, simple, but loaded with meaning. "I don't know if I can do this," he said honestly. "Do what?" "Whatever this is becoming." "And what do you think it's becoming?" "Something that could hurt me." Claire intertwined her fingers with his, a gentle but firm gesture. "Or something that could heal you." They stayed like that, hands intertwined on the table, while Mrs. Brennan came back with a smile that said she'd seen this 1,000 times before. Two frightened people beginning to build a bridge over the abyss of loneliness. And when Owen didn't let go of her hand to pick up the menu, Claire knew something fundamental had changed. It wasn't love yet, but it was the first step in the right direction. The routine changed without either of them officially announcing it. Fridays became Fridays and Wednesdays, then Fridays, Wednesdays, and Sundays. In 6 weeks, they were seeing each other 4-5 times a week, always in public places: the pub, a coffee shop downtown, the flower market that operated on Saturday mornings. Claire learned that Owen took coffee without sugar, but with an absurd amount of milk, that he wrinkled his nose at loud music but secretly liked jazz, that he had a scar on his left eyebrow from when he fell off his bicycle at 8 and needed 5 stitches. Owen discovered that Claire cried at films even when the ending was happy, that she collected antique porcelain teacups she found in charity shops, that she had a cat named Borges who hated visitors but for some reason accepted Owen the first time he went to her flat. It was on a Sunday in June that everything began to crumble, not between them, but around them. Owen had scheduled lunch with his mother, something he'd been avoiding for months. She called every week demanding his presence at family dinner, and he always made excuses: work, trips, exhaustion. But this time she was insistent. Either he showed up, or she'd show up at his office, and nobody wanted Margaret causing a scene in public. "I have to go to family lunch today," Owen said to Claire when they were having coffee in her flat on Sunday morning. Sunlight came through the window, illuminating the dust particles in the air. "That's fine. I have some books to catalogue anyway. I want you to come with me." Claire almost dropped her cup. They'd been together for almost 2 months, but Owen had never mentioned family. In fact, he spoke very little about anything personal. It was like peeling an onion, layer by layer, carefully so as not to hurt him in the process. "Are you sure?" "No," Owen admitted. "But if I don't bring you now, I never will. And my mother is already asking questions about why I seem different." "Different how?" "Less insufferable, according to her." Claire laughed, but there was nervousness in the laugh. "Owen, meeting the family is a big step." "I know. He held her hand across the table. But I'm tired of hiding things, tired of living as if everything were temporary. You're not temporary, or at least I don't want you to be. It was the closest declaration of love he could verbalize yet. And Claire knew that coming from him, it cost a lot. All right, but warn me if your mother is the type who judges by shoes because all mine are worn out. My mother judges by everything, but she'll have to swallow it. The family home was in an old neighborhood with tree-lined streets and mansions that had seen better days. The paint was peeling, the garden half abandoned, but there was still an air of grandeur in the iron gate and marble staircase. The family had money, then lost it. Now they have pride in overdrafts, Owen explained as he parked. And do they know about me? They know I'm seeing someone. They don't know who. Before they could ring the bell, the door opened. A woman of about 70, dyed blonde hair, navy blue suit dress and severe expression looked at them. 45 minutes late, Owen, as always. Mother, this is Claire. Claire, my mother, Margaret. Margaret examined Claire from head to toe in a look that lasted seconds but seemed like hours. Claire felt every imperfection being catalogued and judged. Librarian, correct? Owen mentioned it on the phone. Yes, ma'am. Honest profession, although not very lucrative, I imagine. Margaret stepped away from the door. Come in. The food is already getting cold. The dining room had a crystal chandelier that must have cost a fortune decades ago. The table could seat 12, but there were only 5. Besides Margaret and Owen, there was a younger man who introduced himself as Matthew, Owen's brother, his wife Vanessa, and an empty chair that nobody mentioned. Isn't Dad coming? Owen asked, pulling out a chair for Claire. Your father is resting. His heart has been weak. Maybe if his son showed up more often, he wouldn't be so stressed. Mother, please. Hey, it's true. Matthew comes every week, brings his wife. They're planning to give me grandchildren. You disappear for months and show up with... She gestured vaguely at Claire. With who again? With the woman I'm dating, Owen said with a firm voice. Dating. What an interesting word for someone your age. Margaret cut a piece of roast beef. How old are you, dear? 26, Claire answered, feeling the trap closing. 26, and Owen is 42. Margaret chewed slowly. 16 years difference, interesting. I don't see a problem with age, Claire said, controlling her tone. Of course not. You're young. You have decades ahead. But what about when Owen is 60? Will you want to take care of an old man? Mother, enough. Owen hit his fork on the table. I'm just being practical, son. Someone needs to be. Matthew cleared his throat, trying to change the subject. Owen, are you still working on that viaduct project? Finished it last week. Now I'm designing a house. A house? Margaret raised her eyebrow. Since when do you design residential homes? Since I wanted to. Owen looked at Claire. It's a special house. Lunch continued in a tension that could be cut with a knife. Margaret made subtly poisonous comments. Matthew tried to appease. Vanessa stayed silent most of the time, and Claire, to her credit, maintained her composure. It was only when dessert was served that the real attack came. Owen, we need to talk about money, Matthew said, looking uncomfortable. What money? Dad needs surgery. The insurance doesn't cover everything. We need 50,000. Owen dropped his spoon. 50,000. It's a complex cardiac surgery. Without it, he has maybe a year. And where am I going to get 50,000? You're an engineer. You earn well. I have 2 daughters to support. Matthew avoided looking his brother in the eyes. I also have bills. I invested all my savings in the campaign to save the library. For the first time, Margaret seemed genuinely surprised. You did what? The library where Claire works was going to be demolished. I helped with the campaign, with money, time, contacts. You spent your savings on a library? Margaret seemed incredulous. Yes. For a woman you met 2 months ago. For something that matters. And your father doesn't matter? Margaret's voice rose an octave. Claire stood up. I think I should go. No. Owen held her wrist. You stay. It's my mother who needs to learn boundaries. Owen, don't speak to me like that. Margaret hit her hand on the table. Then stop treating me like I'm your property. For the first time in years, Owen shouted, I've spent my whole life trying to please you. I became an engineer because you wanted it. I married who you approved of. I swallowed every criticism, every disappointment you threw at me. And what did I get in return? Nothing. It's never enough. The silence that followed was absolute. Even the old clock on the wall seemed to have stopped marking time. I'll get the money for Dad's surgery, Owen said calmer. But don't expect me to come back here anytime soon. And Claire comes with me when I do or I don't come. The choice is yours. He stood up, took Claire's hand, and left the house without looking back. In the car, Owen was trembling, not from cold but from adrenaline, anger, liberation. Are you all right? Claire asked softly. No. He rested his forehead on the steering wheel. But I will be. Claire stroked his back in slow circles, saying nothing. Sometimes presence was more powerful than any words. After a few minutes, Owen lifted his head. Sorry about that. You don't need to apologize. Every family has its demons. Mine has a whole army. And you just faced them. That must count for something. Owen started the car, but before pulling out of the space, he looked at Claire. Thank you for not running away. Where would I run to? You still haven't shown me the house you're designing. And in that moment, with everything crumbling around them, Owen smiled, a genuine smile that lit up his face in a way Claire hadn't seen yet, and she knew with absolute certainty that she was falling in love. Not with the perfect version of him, but with the imperfect man who fought every day to be better. The days after the lunch were heavy. Owen plunged into work with an intensity that bordered on obsession. He needed the money for his father's surgery, and the only way was to accept more projects, work nights and weekends. Claire continued seeing him, but now she was the one bringing food to his office, sitting on the old leather sofa while he drew plans, listening to him verbalize frustrations about structures that didn't fit and impossible deadlines. It was on a Tuesday, 3 weeks after the family disaster, that Owen called her to his office in a different way. It wasn't the usual tired request, but there was energy in his voice on the phone. I need to show you something, he said. Can you come now? Claire closed the library early and took a taxi. His office was in a commercial building from the 70s, all exposed concrete and small windows. The lift went up creaking to the 6th floor. Owen was waiting for her at the door, and for the first time in weeks his eyes had brightness. Come. He pulled her inside, crossing the room where 2 drafters worked at lit drawing tables to his private office. The desk was covered with architectural plans, technical drawings, hand-colored perspectives. But in the center, pinned to the wall with tape, there was a larger drawing. A house seen from above, but also in cross-section, showing every internal detail. This is it, Owen said, almost breathless. What I've been working on every night. Claire approached, examining every line. The house had 2 floors, a pitched roof, large windows, but what made her catch her breath was the central room, a library with floor-to-ceiling shelves, a wrought-iron spiral staircase, skylights that would allow natural light to flood the books. Owen, it has bedrooms facing east, like you said you liked waking up with sun. It has a large kitchen with a central island because you love to cook but need space. He pointed to different areas. And here, in the back, a garden with a structure for climbing plants, roses, you said. Claire felt tears burn her eyes. You designed a house for me. For us, Owen corrected, and the weight of that word hung between them. Owen, we've been together for 3 months. I know. He turned to her, holding her hands. I know it's crazy, I know it's too fast, but Claire, for the first time in 7 years, I can imagine a future that isn't empty, and that future has you, has books, has mornings with sun and evenings with coffee. It has life. And if it doesn't work out? Claire asked, voice trembling. And if it does, he countered. What if, for the first time in my life, I do something just because it feels right, and not because it's safe? Claire looked at the drawing on the wall, at the house that existed only in graphite lines but represented so much. There was the heart of a man opening up, line by line. It's the most beautiful house I've ever seen, she finally said. Owen pulled her into an embrace, burying his face in her hair. It smelled of herbal shampoo and coffee. I'm going to build it. I don't know when, I don't know how I'll pay for it, but I'm going to build it, because I need something concrete to remind me this is real." "This is real," Claire affirmed, pulling back just enough to look in his eyes. "We are real." And then, for the first time, Owen kissed her. It wasn't a desperate or passionate kiss from the movies. It was soft, hesitant, loaded with unspoken promises. It was the kiss of someone who had forgotten how to allow himself to feel and was relearning, one gesture at a time. When they separated, both were crying, tears of fear and hope mixed. "I'm so afraid of failing you," Owen confessed. "I'm afraid too," Claire confessed. "But I think being scared together is better than being safe alone." They stood there, embraced in the office lit by fluorescent lamps, surrounded by plans for soulless buildings, while on the wall hung the drawing of a home that was still just a dream. But dreams need to start somewhere, and that drawing was the first stone of a foundation that would be built day after day, choice after choice. July arrived with intense cold, the kind of cold that penetrates bones and makes people walk hunched over, trying to protect themselves from the wind. Owen managed to raise the money for his father's surgery through loans and selling the old car he kept in the garage out of pure sentimental attachment. The surgery was successful, but the relationship with the family remained fractured. Claire and Owen now spent most of their time together. She practically lived in his flat, although she kept her own place. Gradually, Owen's previously Spartan space gained life. Plants in the windows, books scattered on the coffee table, an antique porcelain cup with painted cats that Claire had left there, and that Owen used every morning. It was on a Sunday morning, while they were making coffee together, that the doorbell rang. Owen frowned. Nobody visited without warning. "Must be the porter," he said, going to answer the intercom, but the voice that came from the other side made his blood freeze. "Owen, it's me, Adrian. I need to talk to you." Claire saw the color drain from Owen's face. She'd never seen him like this, not frightened, but as if he'd been punched in the stomach. "Who's Adrian?" she asked quietly. "My ex-husband." The word husband caught Claire by surprise. Owen had never specified the gender of the person who betrayed him. She had assumed, and assuming had been a mistake. "You don't have to answer," Claire said. But Owen had already pressed the door release button. "I do. If I don't do this now, it'll hang there forever." 3 minutes later, Adrian was at the door. He was attractive in a conventional way. Black hair, light eyes, rehearsed smile. He wore expensive clothes but looked tired. "Can I come in?" Adrian asked. Owen didn't move. "Say what you came to say from the door." "Owen, please, don't be like this." "Don't be like this?" Owen laughed without humor. "You cheated on me with my best friend, on our anniversary, in our bed, and I shouldn't be like this." Claire felt her chest tighten. The pain in Owen's voice was palpable. Adrian looked at Claire, then at Owen. "Can we talk in private?" "No. Whatever you have to say it in front of her." "All right." Adrian took a deep breath. "I made a mistake, a terrible mistake. I know I hurt you in unforgivable ways. But the last 7 years have been hell, Owen. I ended things with Marcus 2 months later. I was alone. I tried to meet other people, but nobody was you." "What a shame," Owen said without emotion. "I've changed. I did therapy. I understood my mistakes. And I came to ask for a second chance." The silence that followed was dense. Claire wanted to say something, but knew it wasn't her place. This was a wound Owen had been carrying for years, and only he could decide how to deal with it. "You want a second chance," Owen repeated slowly. "After 7 years, you show up at my door wanting a second chance." "Yes, because I still love you. I always have." "No," Owen said with a firmness Claire had never heard. "You loved the idea of me. You loved having someone who supported you, who closed their eyes to your lies, who was convenient. But you never really loved me. Because real love doesn't betray. Real love doesn't destroy the person it should protect." "Owen, let me finish." Owen took a step forward. "I spent 7 years believing I was the problem, that I wasn't enough, that if I were better, more attentive, less focused on work, you wouldn't have cheated on me. I destroyed my self-esteem trying to understand what I did wrong. You didn't do anything wrong, it was me, I ruined everything. Exactly, it was you, and I carry these scars to this day." Owen held Claire's hand, intertwining their fingers. "But I met someone who's teaching me that scars don't define who we are, that I deserved something real, and for the first time I can feel something besides pain." Adrian looked at their intertwined hands, and Claire saw anger cross his face. "Her? Seriously?" He laughed cruelly. "Some random girl gives you attention and you think it's love." "Be careful what you're going to say," Owen warned. "You think she's with you for what? Certainly not for the fascinating personality. Must be for the money. Or maybe she likes older men, some unresolved daddy issues." Claire felt Owen tremble, but she stepped forward. "I don't know you," she said calmly, "and frankly I have no interest in knowing you. But I'll say one thing. You have no idea of the man he is, what he's worth. And if you did, you never would have thrown it away. Look at that, the girlfriend has a voice." "Get out," Owen said, voice dangerously low. "Get out of my door, my life, and don't ever come back." "You'll regret this," Adrian threatened. "She's a child. She'll leave you when someone better comes along." "Maybe," Owen admitted, and Claire felt her heart squeeze. "Maybe she'll leave me. Maybe this won't last. But at least it's real. At least it's honest. And I prefer 3 months of truth to 7 years of lies." Adrian opened his mouth to respond, but Owen was already closing the door. He turned the key with force, rested his forehead against the wood, and stayed there, breathing heavily. Claire didn't know what to do. Hug? Give space? Speak? Or stay silent? It was Owen who decided. He turned, eyes shining with unshed tears, and said, "Sorry. Sorry for that. You don't need to apologize. I do. He said horrible things, and you didn't deserve to hear that." Claire walked to him, took his face in her hands. "Look at me." She waited until he looked at her. "I'm not a child. I know exactly what I'm doing. And I'm here because I choose to be. Not for money, not for neediness, but because you make me want to be better. Because when I'm with you, the world makes sense in a way it never has before. And if he's right? What if I'm too old, too complicated? Then we'll be old and complicated together." Owen pulled her into a desperate embrace, holding tight as if she would disappear if he let go. "I love you," he whispered against her hair. "I know it's too early. I know I should wait. But I love you." Claire felt the words pierce through her chest like arrows of light. "I love you too." And there in the corridor of a flat still full of ghosts from the past, two hearts began to build something no trauma could destroy. Because true love isn't born from perfection. It's born from the daily choice to fight, even when scared, even when hurt. And they were choosing. August brought new challenges. The library where Claire worked, even after the successful campaign, was facing problems. The old electrical system was failing and the repair costs were astronomical. The council offered limited help, but not enough. Claire began arriving home late, exhausted from meetings with lawyers, donors, community members. Owen watched her wither, but knew he couldn't just solve everything with money. She needed to fight this battle. It was on a Thursday night that his phone rang at 3 in the morning. It was Claire, voice broken. "The library, it's on fire." Owen was in the car in 5 minutes. The journey to the historic neighborhood never seemed so long. When he arrived, 3 fire engines were already there, hoses pouring water through the windows. Black smoke rose against the still dark sky. Claire was on the pavement, wrapped in a thermal blanket, watching everything with empty eyes. When she saw Owen, she collapsed. He caught her in his arms as she sobbed against his chest. "Everything's gone. Centuries-old books, historical documents, everything." Owen had no words. He just held her while the library that had been the stage for their beginning burned. The fire was controlled after 2 hours. The building stood, but the interior was a total loss. Investigators determined it was electrical failure. The old system had finally given out. The following days were a blur of insurance companies, meetings with the council, local media coverage. Claire barely ate, barely slept. Owen tried to help, but felt powerless. It was Mrs. Brennan, the owner of the Irish pub, who had the idea. "We'll do a campaign," she announced when Claire and Owen were having dinner there on a particularly difficult night. "The library saved my life when I came to England without knowing much English. I learned to read properly in that library. I won't let it die. The news spread. Local business owners started making donations. Schools organized jumble sales. A publisher offered 1,000 new books. Gradually, the impossible began to seem possible. But Claire was broken. Not physically, but emotionally. Owen found her crying in the shower one night, water mixing with tears. "I can't anymore," she said. "I can't keep fighting." "Then let me fight for you." Owen got in the shower, fully clothed, pulled her into his arms. "Let me carry this for a while. It's not your responsibility." "It is, because you're my responsibility, because I love you, because everything that hurts you hurts me too." Claire grabbed his soaked shirt. "I'm so afraid of losing everything again. First my mother, then my grandmother, now the library. Everything I love goes away." "I won't," Owen promised. "There can be fire, flood, earthquake. I'm not going anywhere." They stayed there, water falling over both of them, until Claire stopped trembling. In the following months, reconstruction began. Owen used his contacts to get materials at a discount. Volunteers appeared to clear the debris. An architect friend offered services for free. And Claire gradually began to rebuild herself. Seeing the community unite, seeing she wasn't alone, she found strength she didn't know she had. The new library wouldn't be identical to the old one. It would be different, modern in some aspects, but keeping the heart of what it always was, a refuge for those who needed it. In December, 9 months after the fire, the library reopened. It wasn't complete, but it was alive. Shelves still empty, waiting to be filled, walls with the smell of fresh paint, new windows that let in more light. At the reopening ceremony, Claire made a speech. Owen was in the audience watching the woman he loved find her voice again. "This place almost died," Claire said, voice firm, "and I almost died with it. But I learned that destruction isn't the end. It's an opportunity to rebuild better, to build with more care, more love, more purpose." She looked directly at Owen, "And I thank every person who taught me that, who didn't let me give up when all I wanted was to lie down and accept defeat." After the speech, while people explored the renovated library, Owen pulled Claire to the corner that used to be where they first met. "I'm proud of you," he said. "I couldn't have done it without you." "You could have. Maybe it would have taken longer, maybe it would have hurt more. But you would have done it because you're the strongest person I know." Claire kissed him and didn't care that people were watching. "When are we going to start building the house?" she asked when they separated. Owen smiled. "I've already bought the land. Documentation is underway. In 6 months we start." 6 months? 6 months. And then we'll have our own library, our own house, our own new beginning. And in that moment, surrounded by new books waiting to be read, they knew they had survived the worst, and whatever came after they would face together. The euphoria of the library's reopening lasted 3 weeks. Then reality hit hard. Owen's office lost an important contract when a client preferred a larger firm. 2 employees resigned. Bills began to pile up. Simultaneously, Claire discovered that the council would cut the library's funding by 40% next year. She would have to fire half the staff or drastically reduce hours. The pressure began to crack something between them. Owen went back to working late, trying to compensate for the lost contract. Claire stayed at the library until midnight, organizing finances, seeking donors. When they saw each other, they were too exhausted for meaningful conversations. Fridays at 6, which used to be sacred, became the exception, then a memory. It was on a Saturday in February that everything exploded. Owen had promised to help Claire organize a fundraising event, but cancelled at the last minute, because he needed to finalize an urgent project. Claire, who was counting on him, had to do everything alone. The event went well, but she came home frustrated and hurt. She found Owen hunched over architectural plans, cold coffee on the table. "You didn't even notice I arrived," she said. Owen looked up, eyes blurred with exhaustion. "How was the event?" "It would have been better if you were there." "Claire," I explained, "I have a deadline." "You always have a deadline, always have something more important." "It's not more important, it's necessary. I need to keep the office running to be able to build the house." "The house," Claire laughed without humor. Owen, it's been 6 months since you bought the land. I don't see a single brick. Because I'm solving problems. When everything stabilizes... When? Claire interrupted. When will everything stabilize? What if it never stabilizes? What if there's always some crisis, some urgent project, some excuse? Owen stood up, running his hand through his hair in frustration that had been growing for weeks. You think it's easy for me? Think I'm not trying? I think you're trying to do everything alone and pushing me out in the process. I'm not pushing you out. I'm trying to protect you. I don't need protection. I need partnership. The silence that followed was different. It wasn't the comfortable silence of the first months. It was dense, loaded with resentment and exhaustion. Maybe, Owen began, then stopped. Maybe what? Maybe this is too soon. Us, the house. Maybe we should slow down. Claire felt the ground disappear under her feet. Slow down? You mean break up? I didn't say that. But it's what you're thinking. We're in the first real difficulty and you already want to give up. I don't want to give up. Owen raised his voice, but I don't know if I can do this. Balance everything, be what you need and keep my life running. Nobody asked you to be perfect. I asked you to be present. I'm trying to be present. You're not. Claire felt tears burn. You're here physically, but mentally you're already gone. You're drowning in work so you don't have to deal with what's happening between us. The accusation hit Owen hard because it was true. He had buried himself in projects because it was easier to solve problems of concrete and steel than problems of the heart. I don't know how to do this, he admitted, voice breaking. I never learned. My father didn't show emotion, my ex cheated on me. My family taught me that to love is to suffer. How do you expect me to just know how to be what you need? You don't need to know, you just need to try. And stop using trauma as an excuse not to commit completely. The raw truth of those words hung in the air. Are you saying I'm not committed? Owen asked, incredulity and pain mixed. I'm saying you are in theory, but pull back when it gets difficult. Fuck. Owen turned his back. Fuck, you have no idea what I'm going through. And you won't let me know, Claire shouted. Every time I try to really get close, you build another wall. Because that's how I survive. Owen turned back, tears finally falling. That's how I don't completely fall apart. Then am I only loving a piece of you? Will I never know the whole? Maybe there is no whole. Maybe it's just this. Broken pieces trying to fit together and failing miserably. Claire grabbed her bag, hands trembling. I need air. Where are you going? I don't know. Anywhere that's not here. Claire, wait. But she had already left, the door closing with a final thud. Owen stood alone in the flat, surrounded by plans that would never become reality, feeling the weight of every word not said, every fear not faced. He had promised himself he would never let anyone get close enough to hurt him again. And he had broken that promise. And now he was paying the price. Outside, Claire walked aimlessly for hours. She passed the closed library, the bench where they used to have coffee, Mrs. Brennan's pub with its doors already shut. She loved Owen, loved with an intensity that scared her. But love couldn't be just hers. It needed to be from both of them, fighting together, not separately. When she finally came back, it was past 4 in the morning. Owen was asleep on the sofa, face marked by dried tears, laptop still open showing the house plan they might never build. Claire covered him with a blanket, kissed his forehead, and went to the bedroom. In the dark, staring at the ceiling, she knew they were at a crossroads, and the choice they made in the next few days would define whether they could survive this or become just another story of love that almost was. The next 5 days were the worst. Owen and Claire lived in the same flat but barely spoke. Functional conversations about bills, schedules, obligations, nothing deep, nothing true. Owen slept in the office, Claire in the bedroom. They passed each other like ghosts, polite and distant. It was Matthew, ironically, who forced Owen to face the situation. He showed up at Owen's office one Thursday afternoon. You look terrible. That was the greeting. Thanks for the vote of confidence. Did you fight with Claire? Owen didn't answer, but the answer was clear in his face. Matthew sat in the chair across from the desk. Remember when we fought as kids? That ugly fight over the video game? Where are you going with this? I went 2 weeks without talking to you, too proud to admit I was wrong. And you know what Dad did? Beat you. Not that time. That time he sat with me and said, "Matthew, pride is a luxury for those who have many people to lose. You only have one brother. Choose wisely." Owen looked at his brother, surprised. "You never told me that." "Because it was embarrassing to admit I needed that advice. But now you need it." Matthew leaned forward. "Owen, you found someone who puts up with you being you. Imperfect, traumatized, complicated. And you're throwing it away. Why? Fear. It's not that simple. It is. You're scared. So you do what you always do. Build walls. But this time, the walls are going to leave you truly alone. What if I can't be what she needs? What if you're exactly what she needs, but you're so busy sabotaging yourself you can't see it?" The words kept echoing long after Matthew left. That night, Owen came home determined to have the difficult conversation. He found Claire packing. His heart plummeted. "You're leaving?" Claire stopped, holding a pile of clothes. "I'm going to stay at Mrs. Brennan's for a few days. I need space to think." "About us?" "About me. About what I'm willing to accept. About where I draw the line between supporting someone and losing myself in the process." Owen entered the bedroom, closed the suitcase she was filling. "Please don't go." "Owen." "No, let me speak." He held her hands. "You were right, about everything. I'm using trauma as an excuse. I'm building walls. I'm running when I should be fighting. And what's changed now? The prospect of losing you, really losing you. Not in a fight, but losing you definitively. And the idea of that—" His voice failed. "The idea of going back to the life I had before you is unbearable." Claire sat on the bed, pulling him to sit beside her. "Owen, I can't be your only reason to live. It's not fair to me, it's not healthy for you. You're not my only reason, but you're the main one," he admitted. "And I know that's not romantic, not what they should say in films. But it's true. You gave me purpose when I was drifting. You gave me hope when I was resigned. But what about what I need? I need someone who's present, who fights for us when it gets difficult, who doesn't collapse in the first storm. I'll work on it, I promise. Therapy, whatever it takes. Just don't give up on me yet." Claire looked at him, saw the raw vulnerability in his eyes and felt the anger begin to melt. "I'm not giving up, but we need rules." "What rules?" "First, therapy. For you, for us, whoever needs it. Second, honest communication, even when it hurts. Third, Fridays at 6 are sacred again, no matter what happens. Fourth, you don't decide alone when we're going too fast or when it's too much. We decide together." Owen nodded to each rule. "And the fifth?" "Fifth, you start construction on the house, even if slow, even if bit by bit. But you start, because I need something concrete to believe in. I need to see you're truly investing. I'll start Monday, I swear on my life." Claire took a deep breath, processing everything. "It won't be easy. I know. I'll have days I'll want to give up, and so will you. I know. And we still might not make it. We might not make it." Owen took her face in his hands. "Or we might. And that might is worth every risk." They hugged, an embrace of relief and promise. It didn't solve everything. It didn't erase the fight. But it was a beginning. That night, they slept together again. There was no sex, just the need to be close, to feel each other's breathing, to remember why it was worth fighting. And when the sun rose on Friday for the first time in weeks, Owen woke up and smiled, not because everything was resolved, but because they had chosen to try. And sometimes trying is all we need. Therapy began on a rainy Monday in March. Owen went alone to the first session, then with Claire in the following ones. The therapist, a woman in her 50s with grey hair and gentle eyes, made them face uncomfortable truths. "You need to decide if you're together out of love or fear of being alone," she said in one of the sessions. The question hung heavily between them. It was Claire who answered first. "Love, but also because he makes me want to be better." "And you, Owen?" "Love, And because for the first time someone sees my flaws and chooses to stay. But flaws aren't foundation, the therapist pointed out. They're part of the construction. The foundation needs to be more solid. It needs to be conscious choice, not emotional need. The sessions were painful. They laid bare wounds both would prefer to leave closed. But they also brought clarity. Parallel to therapy, construction of the house began. Slow, as Claire had asked, but consistent. Owen hired a small team. The land was cleared, foundations excavated. Every Friday at 6, they went to the construction site. They watched the progress, even if minimal. One week it was just turned earth, another concrete piles, one more, the beginning of walls. On these visits, they talked about the future in ways that would have scared Owen before. "What color for the library?" Claire asked on one of those Fridays. "You choose." "No, we choose. This house is ours." Owen looked at the still incomplete walls, imagining what it would be like when finished. "Navy blue. Like the cover of that first book you gave me." Claire smiled. "The Poetics of Space, or Good Memory." That's when everything changed. The library, which was also recovering gradually, saw Claire implement changes. Fewer programs, but more effective ones. Fewer staff, but better trained. Funds were tight, but she learned to do more with less. And Owen, surprisingly, started showing up there. Not just to pick up Claire, but to help. He fixed broken shelves, installed a new lighting system, gave free lectures for young people interested in architecture. The community noticed. Mrs. Brennan commented at one of the regular dinners they resumed having, "You two are good for each other. You complement each other." "I destroy, she rebuilds," Owen joked. "No," Mrs. Brennan corrected. "You build structures. She fills them with life. That's partnership." The word stayed with Owen. It was in June, 8 months after the big fight, that something significant happened. Owen's father had a cardiac relapse. Not serious, but enough to scare everyone. This time Owen didn't face it alone. Claire went with him to the hospital, held his hand during conversations with doctors, kept him company during the long waiting hours. Margaret, Owen's mother, observed everything in silence. When the father was stable and sleeping, she pulled Owen into the corridor. "She stayed," Margaret said simply. "Yes. Even when it was difficult. Even when you were impossible. Especially when I was impossible." Margaret looked at Claire, who was talking with Matthew in the waiting room. "I judged her wrong. I thought she was too young, unprepared. But she has something I never had." "What?" "True patience. Not the patience of someone who endures out of obligation, but of someone who chooses to stay because it's worth it." Owen felt his eyes burn. "She's special." "She is. And if you mess this up, I'll personally hit you with my crocodile handbag." Margaret threatened, but there was affection in the threat. When they got home that night, exhausted but relieved, Claire made tea and they sat on the sofa. "Your mother was almost friendly," Claire commented. "Miracles happen. Do you think it'll get better? You too?" "I think we can try. Learning from our example." Claire laughed. "Us as an example. What a scary idea." "Why?" "Because we're still figuring it out. We still stumble. But we keep getting up." Owen pulled her closer. "And I think that's what matters." That night, for the first time since the library fire, since the big fight, since all the storms, they made love. It wasn't desperate or urgent. It was slow, careful, loaded with everything words couldn't express. And when they finished, lying in each other's arms, Owen whispered, "House should be ready in 4 months." "Are you anxious?" "Terrified and excited, both things." "Good, it means you're truly alive." And in that certainty they slept, knowing the road would still be long, but now they had a map and company. And that made all the difference. October arrived, painting the world golden. The trees were changing leaves, the air became lighter, and the house began to take recognizable form. Walls raised, roof installed, windows fitted. There was still much missing, finishing, floors, painting, but it was already possible to imagine the complete space. Claire started going to the site even without Owen. She would sit on the steps still without railing, open a book and read there, imagining what it would be like when finished. The light that would enter through the windows, the sounds that would echo through the rooms, the memories that would be created. On one of these solitary afternoons, she found the foreman, Mr. Sullivan, working on something in what would be the library. "Miss Clare, can I show you something?" She followed him inside. In the center of the room there was a wrought-iron spiral staircase freshly installed. Mr. Owen ordered it special, from an ironworks in Wales that does everything by hand. Mr. Sullivan smiled with pride. "Said you deserved something unique." Claire ran her fingers over the worked metal, feeling the reliefs, the details. "It's beautiful. There's more, look here." Mr. Sullivan pointed to small details sculpted into the railing. Tiny books, cats, coffee cups. He had them include everything that represents you both. The tears came without warning. Claire laughed while crying. "He didn't tell me anything. Wanted it to be a surprise, but I thought you should know. Few people commission things like this nowadays. Shows how much it matters." Claire stayed there another hour, exploring every detail Owen had included in the house without her knowing. Shelves with perfect height for her favorite books, a corner window in the bedroom where a built-in bench would allow reading with natural light, a small but efficient closet, because he knew she didn't care about clothes but wanted organization. When Owen arrived from the office, it was already past 7. "You're still here? I thought you'd be at the library." "Mr. Sullivan showed me the staircase." Owen turned red. It was supposed to be a complete surprise. And it was. The best surprise. Claire hugged him tightly. "I don't deserve this. You deserve everything, and more." That night, sitting on the steps, still without railing of the porch under construction, watching the sunset paint the walls pink and orange, Claire asked the question she'd been avoiding. "Owen, when the house is finished, what happens?" "What do you mean?" "Us. Officially. Do we live together? Get married? Just are together?" Owen took her hand, intertwining their fingers. "What do you want?" I asked first. "All right." He took a deep breath. "I want to wake up every day seeing you by my side. I want coffee together in the morning and conversations with no set end time at night. I want to argue about what color to paint the living room and which film to watch on Saturday. I want everything." That was romantic, but didn't answer the question. Owen laughed. "Marriage, if you want? Paper, if it makes a difference to you. But mainly, I want real commitment. The kind that doesn't need a certificate because it's a daily choice." "And if I want the certificate?" "Then we'll go to the registry office on Monday." Claire's eyes widened. "Seriously?" "Completely. Claire, I've learned that delaying decisions out of fear is wasting time, and I've already wasted too much time. I don't want marriage just because we're afraid of losing each other. It's not fear, it's certainty. Certainty that fights will happen and we'll overcome them. Certainty that crises will come and we'll face them. Certainty that even on the worst days, I'd rather be with you than be alone." Claire was silent for a long moment. "Are you proposing to me sitting on a step without railing of an unfinished house?" "Technically, I haven't proposed yet, but if you want me to formally propose—" Owen started to kneel. "No," Claire laughed, pulling him back. "Sit. You don't need all the staging. Then what do you need?" "Honesty, and you already had that, so yes." "Yes, what?" "Yes, I'll marry you. Paper, registry office, certificate, everything." Owen pulled her into a kiss that started soft and intensified, loaded with promise and future. When they separated, both were breathless. "Monday, then?" Owen asked. "Too fast. I need to tell Mrs. Brennan, buy a dress, organize. Or we do something small. Just us, witnesses, registrar." Claire thought about it. It wasn't the wedding with veil and garland her Irish community would expect. But it was theirs. Authentic. Small, but with dinner at the pub afterwards. Mrs. Brennan would never forgive me if we didn't have a party there. Deal. They stayed there until complete darkness took over, planning something that months ago would have seemed impossible, a shared future, built brick by brick, choice by choice. And when they finally left, they left behind on the concrete a mark, 2 names carved with a piece of brick, Owen and Claire, Nov 2026. Childish, perhaps, but theirs. And in that wedding night dawn, lying in the bed that was now officially both of theirs, Owen whispered something he'd been keeping for months. So you saved me. You know that, right? You saved me too, Claire responded in the dark. Then we're even. No, we're together, which is better. And in that simplicity they slept, husband and wife, companions, builders of a life that was just beginning. The wedding happened on a Friday in November, not Friday at 6 in the evening but at 10 in the morning, because it was the only time the registrar had available. Matthew and Mrs. Brennan were the witnesses. Claire wore a simple ivory dress, knee-length with discreet embroidery on the hem. Owen was in a dark suit, navy blue tie that Claire had chosen. The ceremony lasted 15 minutes. Standard vows, signatures, official declaration, nothing elaborate. But when the registrar said, "You may kiss the bride," and Owen pulled Claire close, there were tears in both their eyes. "You're trembling," Claire whispered. From fear and happiness. Owen admitted against her lips. "Me too." The kiss was soft, reverent, like sealing something sacred. Outside the registry office, rain began. Not a gentle rain, but a violent storm that transformed the streets into rivers in a matter of minutes. "Typical," Matthew laughed. "Owen's wedding couldn't be under bright sunshine." "It's symbolic," Mrs. Brennan said, opening her giant floral umbrella. "Storms pass. What remains is what was built underneath." They ran to the cars, getting soaked in the process. Claire lost a shoe in a puddle. Owen tripped on the curb. When they finally got in the car, they were dripping water, laughing like children. "Best wedding ever," Claire declared, taking off the other shoe. "It hasn't even started yet. Wait for the party." The party at the pub was exactly what they needed, intimate, warm, authentic. Mrs. Brennan had prepared a feast, shepherd's pie, fish and chips, sticky toffee pudding that melted in the mouth. Cider flowed freely. Besides Matthew and his family, colleagues from the library appeared, some of Owen's clients, neighbors from the area. Nobody in formal wear, just beloved people wearing their best versions. It was Mr. Sullivan, the foreman, who made the most moving toast. "I met Owen when we started the house. He was a serious man, focused but sad. I could see it in his eyes." He raised his glass of cider. "Then I met Miss Claire, and I saw the sadness go away, a little each day. Like when we remove rubble from a construction site and start seeing the good structure underneath." Laughter echoed through the pub. "What I want to say is, you two are building something beautiful, and good houses aren't made quickly. They're made with patience, brick by brick, same as true love." Mr. Sullivan wiped a tear. "Health to the newlyweds." "Health," everyone repeated. The night progressed with traditional music playing softly in the sound system, overlapping conversations, tight hugs. Claire danced a clumsy waltz with Owen while everyone watched. Neither knew how to dance. They stepped on each other's feet several times, but didn't stop smiling. When the pub finally closed, it was past midnight. The rain had stopped, leaving the air fresh and the pavement glistening. Owen and Claire went to his flat, now officially theirs. On the way, they stopped at the house construction site. "I want to see," Claire said. "It's dark. There's moonlight." They entered through the gate that Mr. Sullivan always left ajar. The full moon's light illuminated the structures in a ghostly but beautiful way. They walked to the center of what would be the living room, where an opening in the still uncovered roof allowed them to see the stars. "In 2 months it'll be ready," Owen said. 2 months, Claire repeated, marveling. Seems surreal. The wedding seemed surreal too, but it happened. Claire spun slowly, observing each wall, each window opening, imagining curtains, paintings, future moments. It's going to be ours, really ours. It already is. We're just waiting for it to be ready to receive us. They sat on the cement floor still without finishing, backs against a wall, looking at the stars through the opening in the roof. "You know what scares me most?" Claire asked quietly. "What?" "That it worked out. Against all odds, all obstacles, all the times we almost gave up. It worked out. And that scares you because now I have something real to lose. It's not potential or possibility anymore. It's concrete, it's mine, it's ours." Owen understood perfectly. He put his arm around her shoulders. "I learned that being afraid of losing is a sign that it's worth having. If it didn't matter, it wouldn't be scary. Philosophy at dawn? Truth at dawn, he corrected. They stayed there another hour, planning silly details. Color of bathroom towels. Whether they should have a television in the living room or not. How many cats to adopt besides Borges? When they finally left, they left a mark on the cement. 2 names carved with a piece of brick. Owen and Claire, Nov 2026. Childish, perhaps, but theirs. And on that wedding dawn, lying in the bed that was now officially both of theirs, Owen whispered something he'd been keeping for months. "You saved me. You know that, right?" "You saved me too." Claire responded in the dark. "Then are we even?" "No. We're together. Which is better." And in that simplicity they slept, husband and wife, companions, builders of a life that was just beginning. December brought suffocating heat and the final rush of the construction. Owen practically lived at the site, supervising every detail. Claire divided her time between the library and helping with finishing choices. Tiles, light fixtures, door handles, 1,000 small decisions that together created the whole. The move was scheduled for December 23rd, 2 days before Christmas. It would be tight but possible. It was on the 15th that the problem appeared. The flooring company delivered the wrong material. Instead of the light oak they had chosen, dark pine arrived, and there was no time to replace it before Christmas. Owen had a collapse. Not dramatic, not explosive. He just sat in the middle of the empty living room and put his head in his hands. Claire found him like that when she arrived from work. What happened? He explained about the flaws, about the deadlines, about how everything was falling apart just when it should be perfect. "What if we use the pine?" Claire suggested. "It's not what we planned." Nothing was exactly as we planned, and it worked out anyway. Owen looked at her, processing. "You're not angry?" "I'm tired, but not angry. Flaws are just flaws. The house is more than that. But I promised perfection. I promised everything would be exactly as you deserved. But you gave me you. Present. Trying. That's already more than I deserve." The words broke something in Owen. He cried there, embraced by her, releasing months of self-imposed pressure. "I'm so afraid of failing you," he confessed between sobs. "You've already failed a few times, and I'm still here," Claire said with affection. "Because true love isn't about always getting it right. It's about getting up together when we make mistakes." They installed the pine floor, and when it was finished, it had its own charm. More rustic, more welcoming than the oak would have been. The last days were pure rush. Curtains arrived. Furniture was assembled. The library was filled with boxes of books Claire brought from her old flat. On the 22nd, 1 day before the official move, Mr. Sullivan called Owen. "There's something I want to show you. In the garden." Owen followed him to the back. There, where there should only be earth prepared for lawn, there was something more. A wooden structure, still raw, forming an arch. "For the climbing roses," Mr. Sullivan explained. "I know it wasn't in the original design, but I thought it fit. My team did it in their spare time. Late wedding present." Owen couldn't speak. He just squeezed the man's hand with gratitude that words couldn't express. That night, Owen took Claire to see. She stood still, observing the arch illuminated by moonlight. "It's perfect," she whispered. "We still need to plant the roses." "We'll do that together, our first thing as official owners." On the 23rd, with help from Matthew, Mrs. Brennan, and some friends, they moved. They didn't have many things. 2 small flats don't accumulate much. But each box carried history. When the last box entered, it was already late afternoon. Everyone had gone. Owen and Claire were alone in their house for the first time. The silence was different, not empty, but full of possibilities. "So," Owen looked around. "We did it." "We did it," Claire confirmed, voice choked. They walked from room to room. The kitchen that smelled new, the bedroom with a view to the east, the bathrooms with tiles Claire had chosen, and finally, the library. Claire stopped at the entrance, observing the shelves that went from floor to ceiling, the spiral staircase with details of books and cats, the reading chair positioned near the window. It's everything I imagined, and more. The books are still missing on the shelves. Tomorrow. Today I just want to feel the space. They climbed the spiral staircase to the small platform at the top, where some special shelves awaited the most precious books. From there they had a view of the entire library, and, through the window, the garden where the wooden arch was outlined against the darkening sky. "Remember that first book, The Poetics of Space?" Owen asked. "I remember. You said it was too technical to reread." I lied. I read it 3 times, because every page spoke about this, about how spaces shape lives, about how houses are much more than structures. "They're memories that haven't happened yet," Claire completed. "Exactly." They went down, went to the garden. Together, in the twilight of December 23rd, they planted the first climbing rose. They dug the earth with their own hands, positioned the small, fragile seedling, watered it carefully. "It'll take years to cover the whole arch," Claire observed. "We have years," Owen responded, cleaning earth from his hands on his trousers. That night they slept on the living room floor because the bed hadn't been assembled yet. Inflatable mattress, sheets that smelled new, light blanket because the heat was still intense. Through the open window, wind brought the smell of wet earth and the promise of summer. "Owen?" Claire called in the dark. "Thank you." "For what?" "For not giving up. Not on yourself, not on me, not on this." Owen turned to his side, finding her in the dimness. "Thank you for teaching me I deserve not to give up." They fell asleep like that, in their new house, with walls that still needed decoration and rooms that still needed life, but with something more valuable than any perfect finish, real hope on solid foundations. And outside, the tiny rosebush began its slow journey to cover the arch. Because true love is like that. It doesn't happen all at once, doesn't complete itself in one moment. It grows, day after day, choice after choice, brick after brick. And Owen and Claire had built something no storm could destroy, because it was built on the most solid foundation that exists, the daily decision to remain, to fight, to love. Not because it was easy, but because it was real. And the real, with all its imperfections and challenges, will always be better than the perfect but empty fantasy. They found each other when both were broken, and together they built something whole, not a magical cure, not an instant transformation, but a shared journey of 2 people who chose to grow together instead of remaining alone. 3 years later, Claire's library received morning light through the east-facing windows. Sun rays touched book spines organized by color, creating a vertical rainbow on the shelves. On the floor, a 2-year-old boy sat surrounded by cushions, leafing through an illustrated book upside down. "Theo, you can't read that way," Claire said, coming down the spiral staircase with another book in her hands. The boy looked up with brown eyes identical to hers and smiled, showing tiny teeth. "Mummy, look! Dinosaur!" He was pointing at the picture of a cat. "Almost, love, it's a cat. Dinosaurs come later in the book Daddy promised to read tonight." From the garden, voices came mixed with the sound of laughter. Claire went to the window. Owen was kneeling in the earth beside Margaret, his mother, both planting something in the herb bed. The relationship had improved gradually. It wasn't perfect. Margaret still had moments of sharp criticism, but there was genuine respect, especially after Theo was born. The grandson had softened something in the woman who seemed made of stone. "More to the left, Mother. Basil needs more sun." Owen was instructing. "Don't tell me how to plant. I had a garden before you were born. And you killed all the plants. Dad told me." "Traitor!" Margaret threatened to throw earth at him, but was smiling. Claire observed the scene with that feeling of fullness that still caught her off guard sometimes, as if happiness were an unexpected visitor who decided to stay. The house had changed in 3 years. The once white walls now had color, soft yellow in the kitchen, blue in the bedroom, mint green in Theo's room. Photographs covered the corridor, the registry office wedding, first night in the house, Theo's ultrasound, first steps, Christmases, birthdays. The climbing roses had fulfilled their promise. They completely covered the arch, exploding in pink flowers every spring. They had become a mandatory photography point for visitors. The community library had also prospered. Claire had managed a partnership with the council and private companies, expanding opening hours and creating programs for children. Owen had renovated the entire electrical system for free, ensuring there would never be a fire risk again. They still had Fridays at 6. Now it was Fridays at 6 with Theo sleeping in their laps or drawing on the floor or trying to climb shelves. The essence continued, time dedicated just to them, unhurried conversations, intentional presence. The doorbell rang. Claire went down the stairs, Theo in her arms, and opened the door. Mrs. Brennan was there with a covered tray. "Sticky toffee pudding. New recipe I want you to test." "Mrs. Brennan, you're going to make me fat." "Nonsense. You need to eat more. You breastfed too much, got too thin." Theo reached out to the lady, who took him in her lap with the practice of someone who had raised 4 children. "And my prince, how are you?" "Prince," Theo repeated, proud. Owen and Margaret came in, hands dirty with earth, laughing at some inside joke. Owen stopped when he saw Mrs. Brennan. "You're making it routine to invade our house on Saturdays." "Someone needs to make sure you eat properly," she retorted. "And I brought news." "What news?" "They're going to demolish the building next to the pub. They're going to build modern flats." Mrs. Brennan made a disgusted face. "Ugly thing. No personality." "So what?" Claire asked, serving coffee. "So I thought about expanding the pub. Buy the space, make a bigger dining room. But I need someone to design it." She looked at Owen expectantly. "Mrs. Brennan, don't give me excuses about work. You owe me. All the free food I give to this family." Owen looked at Claire, who smiled encouragingly. "All right, I'll do the design, but you pay in sticky toffee pudding." "Deal!" The afternoon unfolded with coffee, conversation, Theo demanding attention from everyone. Matthew arrived later with his wife and 2 daughters, bringing chocolate cake that Vanessa had learned to make. The small house became full. Children's noise, adults talking about trivialities and depths, smell of coffee mixed with basil that Margaret had just planted. Claire had a moment as an external observer. She looked at that scene. Owen on the floor playing with Theo and the nieces, Margaret and Vanessa discussing recipes, Matthew and Mrs. Brennan debating football, and almost didn't recognize the life she had now. 3 years ago she was a lonely librarian in an empty flat. Owen was a bitter engineer avoiding human connections. And now... "What are you thinking about?" Owen appeared beside her, Theo hanging on his back. "About how we've changed." "For better?" "For real," Claire corrected. "Not better or worse. Just more real." Theo pulled Owen's hair, who pretended to complain, but was smiling. "Daddy, dinosaur." "After dinner, champ. I promised, didn't I?" Pro-mised. When everyone finally left, it was past 8 at night. The house was messy, toys scattered, dirty cups, cake crumbs on the floor. "We're not cleaning today," Owen declared, collapsing on the sofa. "Amen." Claire threw herself beside him. Theo was already sleeping in their room, exhausted from so much playing. "Are you happy?" Owen asked suddenly. Claire turned her head to look at him. "Are you asking seriously?" "Totally, because I am. Happier than I imagined was possible, but I want to know if you are too." "Owen, look around. This house, our family, our life. It's everything I always wanted without knowing I wanted. Even with the mess, the occasional fights, the sleepless nights when Theo is sick. Especially because of that." Claire took his hand. "Because it's real. It's not a fairy tale fantasy. It's real life, with real problems, and real love facing everything." Owen pulled her closer, kissed the top of her head. "You know what I realized? I never properly thanked you." "For what?" "For not giving up on that bitter man who walked into the library 4 years ago. For seeing something in him that he didn't see himself. For having patience when I was impossible. You make it sound like it was a sacrifice. It wasn't. Even on the difficult days, it was worth it." They stayed in comfortable silence, that kind of silence that only exists between people who truly know each other. "Remember the drawing?" Owen asked. "The first plan of the house I showed you?" "I remember. I thought it was crazy." It was, but every good story starts with a bit of craziness. He got up, went to the office, came back with a rolled-up sheet. It was the original drawing, yellowed by time, with fold marks, notes in the margins. I kept it, as a reminder of where we started. Claire unfolded the paper carefully. There was everything: the central library, the bedrooms facing east, the garden with structure for roses. And in the corner, in Owen's handwriting, a note she had never seen. For Claire. For us. For a life worth living. You wrote this before showing it to me? The night before. I was terrified you'd think it was too crazy, but I needed to put it on paper, make it real. Claire felt tears burn. And look where we are now, living inside the drawing. Living better than the drawing, because paper doesn't capture children's laughter, or the smell of morning coffee, or what it's like to see you coming down the spiral staircase every morning. They retraced their path to the library. Through the window, they saw the rose arch under moonlight. Somewhere in the neighborhood, a dog was barking. Wind made the rose leaves dance. We should plant more, Claire suggested. Make an entire living fence. We can. We have time. And in that simple promise, while we have time, that was everything. Not the illusion of eternity, but the choice to build, day after day, something that would last. They went up to the bedroom where Theo slept, arms thrown above his head in the total surrender of childhood. They stood there watching, marveling at that small life they created together. He's going to grow up in this house, Owen whispered. He'll learn to walk better in the corridor. He'll read his first books in the library. He'll bring friends to play in the garden. He'll make the mess we made. He'll fall. He'll get up. He'll have his heart broken and he'll learn to love again. And we'll be here for all of it. Claire nestled in Owen's arms, watching their son sleep. Do you think we did it right? Being parents, being husband and wife, being all of this? I think we're trying, and trying with true love. So yes, I think we're doing it right in our imperfect way. That night, after putting Theo back in his crib in his room, Owen and Claire lay in the bed that already had 3 years of stories. They didn't make love, they just embraced, fitting into each other with the familiarity of those who had mapped every curve, every sigh, every heartbeat. I love you, Claire said in the dark. Not the romantic movie way, the real way that chooses you every day even when it's difficult. I love you the way that makes everything worthwhile, Owen responded. The way that transformed my life from black and white to technicolor. And there, in that house that was more than structure, in that life that was more than routine, in that love that was more than feeling, they slept. Outside, the roses continued growing, slowly, patiently, covering one more piece of the arch each season. Because true love is like that. It doesn't happen all at once, doesn't complete itself in one moment. It grows, day after day, choice after choice, brick after brick. And Owen and Claire had built something no storm could destroy, because it was built on the most solid foundation that exists, the daily decision to remain, to fight, to love. Not because it was easy, but because it was real. And the real, with all its imperfections and challenges, will always be better than the perfect but empty fantasy. They found each other when both were broken, and together they built something whole, not a magical cure, not an instant transformation, but a shared journey of two people who chose to grow together instead of remaining alone.